Just today, I wish that I still lived next to an ocean because I could have done a really funny bit to start this video about seashells. It would have been gold. But I live in the prairies now. So the intro you get is welcome back to my channel. My name is Dean, and on this channel, I talk a lot about theology, a lot about Christian culture. If you like that kind of content, maybe think about subscribing to the channel, and definitely do me the favor of liking this video. Just take a leap of faith right now and click that button. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the reach of this video. Today, we're going to be talking about a really important topic that I think is important now, and it's just going to become more and more important as we head into the future, as we consider what it means to be the local church in an online world and digital ministry. And I mean, just our lives the last 18 months has basically been online. And I think that's going to continue. Hopefully for totally different reasons, but I think it's going to continue. So this story came to my mind when I was reading an article from Christianity Today last week on Bethlehem Baptist Church, and I mean, just all the issues that have been going on there. And if you know the name of that church, it's probably because you know that their pastor for a long time was John Piper. Beloved figure in evangelicalism, but there's been a lot of issues at his church, even leading his successor, Jason Meyer, to resign, as well as a few other elders at the church and some seminary professors over on the school side. And a lot of it seems to center really on Joe Rigney and him being the new president there at Bethlehem Seminary, and his connections to Doug Wilson over in Idaho and some of the ideology attached to that. There's a lot. So it's a big story. It's got a lot of different perspectives. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in the story, go read the Christianity Today article. I will say, don't just read that article, because I do think that it's pretty slanted towards the institution. So maybe look up also those individuals who are cited in that article and look at their social media and see what they're saying too, just to get the biggest picture about what happened there. I'm not here to talk about that. I feel like I'm always saying that in these videos. What I do is I try to take a story out of it and just something that we can all relate to and talk about the impact in just Christian culture. So one of the stories that popped out to me in this article was the story of a congregant, Sar Brema. I'm probably saying that name wrong, so I apologize. But this congregant was upset with his pastor, Joe Rigney, who's now the president there at the seminary, and something that he said on a Sunday morning, which, I mean, we've all been there, I think. If you've been in ministry and preaching more than like 3 sermons, you probably had people be like, hey, what did you mean by that? Or maybe they're just like scrolling on their Instagram and, you say something and they're just like, wait, what? What did he say? And they kind of put 2 dots together, and it's not what you said, but, they think that's what you said, so you have a little bit of a misunderstanding, or maybe there's just like a slight disagreement. So that's not, the abnormal thing here. That happens all the time. If you're a pastor, you've gotten that text on a Sunday afternoon or a Monday morning being like, hey, pastor, can we get together this week? And you know exactly what that's about. That's fine. That's, normal and healthy. I think it's a good thing to be able to, not just hold things in, but to be able to be like, hey, can we talk about this? So that's not the weird part of this story. But what is odd and concerning is that story is now public knowledge. Like the idea that a congregant was upset with something that their pastor said in a sermon and had a meeting, in my mind, I just think of like going to Starbucks and having a conversation with someone, and to think that conversation is now something that everyone can read. That is really concerning. As a pastor, I get like, oh, wow, that's kind of terrifying to think about, like things that I've said in a private scenario being something that people, in other countries can go and just read whenever they want. But then again, as I was thinking about this, I was like, well, I've never said anything like what Rigney said. So I'm fine with that. Like, just to think about, like, yes, it's concerning, but also don't say awful things, and maybe that won't become public knowledge. But I do think that as we move into the future, this idea of how we settle church disputes is going to become more and more of a public thing. And like as a Christian, I just think, is that biblical? Is it biblical to follow this pattern? And I think that first off, when you have disputes, as Baptists especially, we're really staunch on ecclesiology, the theology of the church. And so I go to Matthew 18, right? With church discipline, that's the pattern that you follow when you have these kind of disputes. But let's give the benefit of the doubt and say that an individual in a local church context is like, even that scenario, I'm not trying to make a judgment call on this individual in the article, but let's say that that person went through the steps that he could, so meeting one-on-one, and that didn't resolve the conflict. And then bringing a couple people in, and that didn't resolve the conflict. And then, maybe even not having access to bring it to the church. That's a big thing. In a lot of these bigger churches, and even in some smaller churches, leadership is set up in such a way that it's really hard to hold them accountable. Or like the culture around is like, well, you just don't talk bad about, Pastor Dean. You don't talk bad about him. And if you do, everyone's going to be just like throwing you out of the church. So I think that can lead into it as well. But let's just say that a person tries to do the Matthew 18 thing of going through church discipline and it doesn't work. In the past, usually that meant just being like, okay, I'm done. And I'm just going to leave the church. Or maybe they send out a mass email or letter and just saying like, hey, this is what happened. But it wouldn't be something that everybody knows about. It would maybe be like the members of that local church. So now we live in a culture that's a little bit different. We live in a culture now with the online means to share everything. It's the goofy thing of like on Instagram sharing, what you had for breakfast and giving people that personal information, or also, things like, sharing all kinds of videos of your children online. I have had to think about that, right? As someone who posts videos on YouTube, I share a lot about my personal life on here. We live in that kind of a culture where, it's socially acceptable to do that kind of stuff. And we give the world a lot more knowledge than maybe past generations. But then we also live in a world that's been impacted by things like Me Too and Church Too and different kinds of, I don't know what the right word is. Campaigns seems wrong, but those kind of movements, I think that would be a better word for it. And we live in a society now where people aren't going to judge you for coming out and saying this authoritative figure in my life did this to me. And I think that has impacted the church to where people are more inclined, if they don't get the healthy conclusion that they think they should have gotten from a Matthew 18 pattern, that they are wanting to get their story out anyways. Maybe just because they want to be able to let people in their sphere know what happened to them, and it's like focused on their own personal mental health and things like that. But then also because it could happen to other people. And especially, like, let's separate a couple things, because it's a little different. All right, let's separate the idea of like sexual abuse and physical abuse, and say, things that cops should immediately get into the picture with. Let's separate that kind of stuff, and we're focused more on like domination and bullying and spiritual abuse and things like that. Maybe even doctrinal things like really bad theology or even heretical teaching. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Is it okay for someone to have tried the Matthew 18 route and were stonewalled for some reason to then go online and say, hey, this is what was said to me? Well, your first reaction to that might be like, that's gossip. That's gossip, so no, because the Bible says that we shouldn't gossip. And for a long time, I got to be honest, that was also my opinion. of like, no, just, you tried, you did it, and just move on. I don't think that that's true anymore. And the reason why is because we're not talking about something that is untrue or that is rumor. If something is like debatable, then yeah, you shouldn't, because you don't know. But if you do know and you don't say anything, you're personally responsible for other people who would get hurt in that scenario, who might have to go through the same pains that you've experienced, because you didn't, want to let people know what was really going on. So I don't think that it's gossip to do that. And again, we're giving the benefit of the doubt and saying you tried Matthew 18 and were stonewalled in an unbiblical practice, and so you were unable to come to a healthy, good, and godly conclusion on that. So I don't think that is gossip. And another thing that people usually throw into this is like, what about the reputation of the church? Now everyone is looking at Bethlehem Baptist and they're just seeing, all these issues, and you've really tarnished Jesus's reputation through that. This is one that gets me a little bit more riled up because one, we are never told in Scripture to be the advocate of the church, of saying that we are the ones responsible for the way others view the church. Yes, our actions and our words do impact that, but Jesus said, he promised that I will build my church. And I don't think that one local church having a bad reputation because of something that happened in their local context and was then, publicized, I don't think that is going to stop Jesus from building his church. I just don't. So I think theologically, that doesn't make sense. But then also, in a practical sense, what would be the opposite of this? To be silent, and again, others getting hurt, but also something worse could happen. And this has happened many, many times, where something small happened, some character issue in the church. Again, I'm separating, sexual abuse and physical abuse and things that the police should get involved in right off the bat. Pastors, I'm talking to you. If you have some issue like that, you should have the cops involved right off the bat. But let's separate those, and we're talking about other angles of like spiritual abuse and bullying and domination and all the things I said before. So I think that if we just allow that to happen in the church, it can get worse. It can get worse and worse and worse. And then, yeah, it might actually lead to something where the police have to get involved and do something. And that's awful. But we could have stopped it if we were just willing to take a hit with the reputation, and just let people know, hey, this is what happened. This is what this individual said. And I think that we could actually do a lot of good by doing it that way. So am I concerned about this idea of, and again, it's just going to become more popular, or not popular. It's going to be more prevalent in our culture, where these things are just going to be known because people are posting more and more things online and feeling more and more comfortable doing that it's just going to happen more often. But am I concerned about it? Absolutely. Do I think it's wrong? I don't think so. I think that in a lot of scenarios, there are good reasons why that would be done. And I think that there are healthy reasons, even spiritually healthy reasons why that should be done. So what do you think? I'd be interested in knowing what you think about, not the Bethlehem scenario, even though I'll probably use some people's faces in the thumbnail because that always helps. I got to get people to click on the video. And I don't think it's clickbait to talk about, an aspect of the story and not get into details. But what do you think about this idea of church disputes not just being private anymore, but eventually becoming public in a lot of scenarios. What do you think about that? Is that right? I'd be interested in what you know, so leave it down in the comments section. I'll definitely be interacting with you there. Like this video if you haven't already, and think about it. Just think about subscribing to the channel. If you like this stuff, if you enjoyed this content, give it a shot. Maybe you will regret it, maybe not. I don't know. But, you know, sometimes life is worth the risk, right? I really don't know how to end these videos very well, but I'll see you in the next video.